800-951-0592. Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour. If you're just joining us, obviously we're waiting on the Fed. Right now, the money, if you will, is a soft quarter of a point. In other words, they're going to raise a quarter of a point and then leave room to say, hey, this may be it for a while. Try to talk sweet to the markets here and give the Fed a lot of room to stop raising rates in the future, a lot of room to potentially stop quantitative tightening, which I don't know what we're the benefit of. Hey, our balance sheet's up 400 billion, but we sold 75 billion. I don't know, but that's what the market is expecting. We've been notified, and I just got another email here. Silver it's just disappearing once again. Last call here, Silver Eagles, case of Silver Eagles at 18,000. If you want a roll of 20 U.S. Silver Eagles at 825, $half at 250. Silver quarters, rolls of silver quarters at 230. Rolls of silver dimes at $115. This is also last call for the British 10th ounce. U.S. 10th ounce gone. I mean, they're a fortune. $245 on the British Kings and Queens. Right now, I'm going online. You know, we had those $20 Liberties on sale at $23.40. That's gone. $23.50. I'm trying to keep it in line here. I would not be surprised to see $20 gold above 2,400 come tomorrow, depending on what happens today. But we just got a notification where our wholesaler has the silver prices, right? Hey, cases of silver are X, bags of junk are Y, XYZ, right? You know what I'm saying? They now don't say a price. What they say now is we're buying them, and essentially saying to us, hey, we don't have any more, but if you've got some, here's what we're buying them for. And I'm looking at those prices, Jason. When they do get them, the premiums are going to be a lot more expensive. This is what we're going to be in for.
And I think the rest of the year is going to be no different. I don't know if it'll be this extreme for the entire year, but if things just unravel slowly and they slowly just get worse, that means it's not getting better. So why would you think that the supply and the premiums would get better? And this thing really, Joe, the way I see it, I just see this thing getting worse, and maybe not all at once. I think there's going to be an all at once moment. I think somewhere between now and 2025, there's going to be a huge market, a real emergency, one of the big banks going under, something major. But until then, Joe, I think for the next 2 years, you're going to keep to see this, until this inflation works its way out. I actually think the extreme inflation will eventually work its way out of the system, which is why the Fed's raising the rates today. But it could take a while to really get it unwound and out of there. And Joe, we could see this sort of price gouging, as far as there's no supply, the premiums have to go up, and it's not, I shouldn't use the word gouging. It's just the facts of life.
There's no supply.
There's no silver.
It's simple. There's no supply. Everybody, and got to remember, everyone's got to understand this is happening everywhere. And you don't think in Europe with what happened with Credit Suisse, you don't think everybody in Europe's pouring into gold and silver? China pouring into gold and silver, even in India now. All of it, India's always been a big gold buyer. Now they're a massive silver buyer. There's just not enough silver to go around. Sunshine, who makes the disc that these mints use to stamp their products on it, they're running at full capacity. They don't have any more machines. They're running them 24 hours a day. That they're making every disc they can possibly make. Jason, it's just not enough.
Yeah, you have to roll out that silver sheet and then knock the blanks out of the sheet, and then you got to remelt the sheet back. And There's a process to it. It's not an easy process to get. Obviously it's modern and there's machines running all this, but still, if you don't have the raw silver to make them to begin with, it makes it even more complicated, Joe.
Yeah. So right now, $20 gold, 23.50, and I've got the right to go higher. I'll just say that on all of this stuff at 800-951-0592. We're talking about Sovereign Man was out talking about government spending. Think about this. 1999, 1.7 trillion was the total federal budget. It looks like 7 trillion's going to be the number for 2024. And that's astounding. And you think about, well, man, we must be so much better off, right? So the Social Security must be fixed with that kind of spending, right? Nope, right? Medicare and Medicaid must be fixed with that kind of spending. Matter of fact, it's worse. And think about, do you really think, are we in a better place today than we were in 1999? I don't think many people would think so. 1999, the vast majority of Americans could still afford a house, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing about the inflation that you don't think about, which is that a lot of people in this country have government assistance, Social Security being a huge one, meaning, well, you got the inflation, so now the retired community, they all need to have more money coming in to bridge the gap of the expense of living, and that comes out of taxes, which is all the inflation pushing the amount of everything, the price of everything going up. It's more money chasing smaller amounts of goods and services. So yeah, Joe, it's unfortunately the government spending more money is a huge indication of the inflation. Huge, just massive.
Think about defense spending, about doubled. We used to spend about $500 billion. We're spending close to $1 trillion now, especially when you've been probably more than that if you factor in what we're doing with Ukraine. The last year of Obama, which was 2016, right? 2016. It was 3.2 trillion. We're talking 7 now. I mean, we've doubled it in 8 years? Doubled it. I mean, and that's just, I mean, it's absolute insanity about what's happened. And then again, this is just giving you an idea of what's coming. Because guess what? You think we're stopping at 7 trillion? 7 trillion doesn't do anything to fix Medicare, doesn't do anything to fix Social Security, right? Doesn't do anything other than what? Well, we're just trying to keep doing what we've always been doing, and it keeps costing us more and more to do it. It's not a good thing. 800-951-0592. Well, think about this. Gold went from 250 to 2,000. Where do you think it's going next? We'll be back. $800-951-0592. Gold's up a dozen here, 1953. Silver's up almost 40 cents here. Actually, it is up now 40 cents now, 22.73 on silver. All out today. If you're buying silver, do it today. Premiums are going to be up, and unfortunately, there's a very likely scenario that a lot of it will be unavailable. So the yesterday we warned on $0.50. Jason, now I'm warning on the whole thing. I mean, it just hasn't stopped here. Pac West Bank. We're trying to figure out who's next after First Republic. It looks like Pac West may be next. By the way, First Republic down as they were unable. JP Morgan was working with First Republic on a capital raise, a stock offering. They have scrapped it. And there's only one reason to scrap it. Because the balance sheet doesn't support it, right? If the balance sheet, it was good, obviously you go out and, hey, we're going to, sell 1 million shares at $20 or 5 million shares at $20. Obviously, it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. PacWest was also trying to do a capital raise. It also got scrapped. PacWest down another 10% so far this morning. And if the Fed raises rates like we expect, Jason, that's going to put more pressure on them.
I would almost bet, a silver ounce, so to speak, that at least a dozen to 24 banks have already been helped, or there's a battle plan in place for exactly what they're going to do, Joe.
They're borrowing, they're borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars right now from the Fed. Hundreds of billions of dollars.
And Janet Yellen said that they were looking at a few banks a couple of weeks ago, and we know that might be at least 30 to up to 180 banks. So in my mind, Joe, they've talked to the big banks and the bigger banks and the more solvent banks, and probably solved a lot of the problems. But just because a bank didn't fail doesn't mean it didn't fail. If the Fed comes in and they're talking to bigger banks and they arrange the fixing of certain institutions, we're not going to hear about it. So I think a lot of these banks have already fallen, Joe, or they've just been bailed out. And I think what Joe's talking about is what's the next one that the Fed's going to actually have to physically borrow, loan the money to. That's what we're going to be watching. Yeah. And Joe, for everyone that they fix, I'll bet there's 5 to 10 that they've already messed around to get them to stop from failing.
So they've got a buyer for Signature Bank, one of the banks that failed last week. But in order to get the buyer, the FDIC had to eat another $11 billion in losses. Still, as far as I know, still no buyer for Silicon Valley Bank. And again, the answer is simple, because the FDIC and the Federal Reserve are going to have to eat massive amounts of losses. And what they're doing to try to save these banks right now, here's what's scary about it, because here's what they're doing. Think about your house, okay? Because I think this is something everyone can relate to. You bought the house for $1 million. Now the house is worth between $700,000 and $800,000. If you had to sell it today, that's all you could get for it. What the Federal Reserve is doing right now for these banks is loaning them the $1 million on the house, even though they know it's only worth between 7 and 800 billion, and trying to say, see, everything's okay. But guess what? All the investors, all the big guys know, hey, wait a minute, that's not worth that. And if it's not worth that, why would I leave my money at this bank? I'm shame on me at that point for doing it. And Jason, this is as simply as put, this is what's happening. And even that isn't enough to save these banks.
Well, and it's a Fed loan for these first few institutions. Yeah. So it's almost like, Joe, I can't pay my mortgage payment. So this guy offered me $24,000 credit card. I'm going to use this credit card to make I'm going to take out a loan to pay my loan payment. And my mortgage is $2,000 a month. So I've got 12 months payments on this credit card. We'll just see how that goes, right, Joe? It's making the problem worse, and as the months flake away, Joe, it's going to be worse.
This is why they can't raise the capital, because they're like, wait a minute, you got to pay that loan back next year. It's a 1-year loan. How are you going to pay it back? Because it's not worth $1 million, right? Why would you pay $1 million to the Fed on something that's worth $700,000? And who knows? A year's a long time. I mean, we go into a recession, right? I'm not saying that, but it looks like if we do, right, Jason, it could be worth even less.
Well, austerity, Joe. I think what a lot of these banks, when they get the loans, are going to do is start closing down half their branches to cut expense. How's that sound? I'm guessing that's a big part of it, Joe. So only two ways: you got to raise money or you got to cut expenses.
Yep. Here's one of the things that they're expecting the Fed to say in their statement. Okay. Now, this isn't the statement, but this is what they expect. Financial conditions have tightened considerably in recent days following concerns about the banking industry. I don't think they're going to be that plain, but that's what's happened. The banking system remains resilient. Does it? And the Federal Reserve continues to work in conjunction with other agencies to ensure the availability of sufficient system liquidity. Now, this is what they're anticipating Jay Powell to say, or at least be in the statement. That is a huge change in previous statements and probably will be a catalyst once again for higher gold and silver prices and a catalyst for the Fed to end rate hikes sooner rather than later. Patriot Radio News Hour will be back right after the break. I think this is going to be the big phrase in all of this. Right now, the Fed has maintained, and they've maintained this for the better part of the last year now, that ongoing increases will be appropriate. Everyone's going to be looking at that particular phrase. JP Morgan has just come out and expects that phrase to disappear. That ongoing increases will be appropriate. I think this is what gold is going to be looking for. If that phrase is gone, and again, ongoing increases will be appropriate. If that phrase is gone, we're going to see Wall Street react positively. We'll see gold and silver react very, very positively, because that will be an indicator that the Fed is getting ready to wrap up rate increases, right? Right now, as Jason's been calling it for the last week and a half, he expects a quarter of a point today. I think it's a mistake, but it looks like they're going to do it, right? Right now, we think it's the soft quarter of a point, but the Fed will take this ongoing increases will be appropriate out of the statement. And if they do that, that will be an indicator that at the next meeting, they're either going to say this is the last rate hike for a while, or they're going to say, hey, we're not even raising rates. That's kind of what that would imply, that rate hiking cycle is coming to an end, which will obviously send the dollar lower, will send gold and silver prices higher. So, Jason, I think that's going to be the key phrase today.
Yeah, I think so. And looking ahead, I think the CPI may come in at 5.5 the next month. And then I think that would really give them a reason to pause next time. And we'll see. Yeah. If that CPI is 6 or higher,
it got to 6, right? It was 6 this last time around. Anything in the 5s probably gives them a feel-good story on all of that. Again, silver, this is, man, you know what? We've been chasing silver for the last week trying to get it. Now I know why it's been so hard. Supply is extremely, extremely limited. 18,000 for a case, $725 for a roll. Those are U.S. Silver Eagles, a case of 500. A roll has 20 of them in there. And we have been warned that once the meeting, the minutes have been released, that there may not be any to be had. So just take that for what we're being told. $50 rolls at $2.50, rolls of silver quarters at $2.30, rolls of silver dimes at $115. By the way, same on all of those. And then $20 gold pieces now $2,350. And then the final day on the British 1/10 ounce, the kings and the queens at $245. I know that's a lot. Normally we pitch one thing. Now we're coming out, well, here's 8 different items, but sometimes it just works out that way. Get it put away. Keep stacking it up here. 800-951-0592. And Jason, we'll know here in a few hours what it's going to look like.
Yeah, Joe, and sometimes you have a little bit of everything, right? I mean, if we have $120 gold pieces, that's like $200,000 in gold we're selling. But when you have a little silver here, a little silver there, it's in 10th ounce gold, you have to sell quite a bit of it to get to that kind of number, right, Joe?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that kind of number will mean there is none left. That's how tight silver is right now. God bless everybody. Jason and I, listen, we got a really good half-empty cup. We're going to play some Glenn Beck, some digital currency stuff. Stay tuned for that.